Brian, you know, the irony is you probably know these systems better than me.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Reactor session. We are going to get started here in just a few minutes. I have just a quick couple things I want to mention, though, before we get started. We do have the live event Q&A open, so you should see an icon that is 2 text boxes with a question mark in the middle. That is going to be the live event Q&A. Please feel free to add your questions in there, and we will be taking those. Also in the live event Q&A, I will be sharing some links. I'll share a link to our Reactor meetup page where you can find other sessions like this, as well as a link to sign up for our monthly newsletter. I'll also share a link to our Reactor YouTube channel where you can find the recording of this session, as well as other past Reactor sessions. And then also a link to a quick Reactor survey. If you do have a few minutes today and you can fill out the survey, we really do appreciate the feedback. And then Rory, one of our speakers, has also given me some links to share in the chat as well to some of the demos and docs he'll be reviewing today, as well as a link to register for the Dev Nexus conference, which is coming up here February 17th through 18th, and Rory will be talking more about that as well. So again, thank you all so much for joining us, and Rory, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, and I've got great news. My colleague Brian Benz is going to assist me at places that he wants to sit and just come in as a sidekick there. And if you don't know Brian's a senior cloud advocate. I'm a senior cloud advocate for Java. Brian does even more than me. He does events, and we've got so much to show you today. And Brian, you know, the good news is that you actually created this original slide deck, so you kind of know it a little bit better than me, which is great news. You can follow me on Twitter, the tweets, at Rory Preddy. I do memes and updates and occasionally some Azure stuff. So yeah, let's get started. So what is this talk about? It's build and run Java apps on Azure, and it's a really a 10,000-foot tall view of how to start your engagement with Azure. I'm gonna do a really nice demo, and it's really fresh using Azure DevOps starters with Gradle, with Github Actions. I was just chatting to the product team today, and it's hot off the press for that. So let's get started around what you can expect. So first, let's set the stage. Now, the interesting thing about the community indexes or the programming indexes is that they don't really change. Now, what happens is they just kind of blick a little bit, but it's business as usual. And what you'll see there is that Java matters. Everyone says that Java's dead, Java's dead. Brian, how long have you heard the phrase Java's dead?
It pops up every couple of years. Hey, one thing, I don't think you're showing your slides right now.
Okay, let me share my screen. That is an important factor.
Yeah.
Let's go there, and you are an excellent sidekick. Thank you.
That's what I'm here for. Make sure you're showing your screen.
Let's move the Teams little thingy to there, and then let's go here. Okay, so that's the index there. And the thing about indexes is that we've seen that the top 8 languages are always the top 8 languages. There's hardly any real movement from here. But it's not only that Java matters to the communities, Java matters to Microsoft. And the reason for that is we use Java internally on many of our tools. Not only in our tools, but we also host Java systems, and we have a really rich ecosystem to run your Java tools in. So let's have a look at some of those ecosystems. So let's also look at when this all started. And I remember the moment that Satya actually brought that slide out, and literally hell froze over, because that is the Microsoft Loves Java slide. And immediately everyone goes, no, we don't. No, he didn't do that. And you know that Satya actually came from Sun Microsystems back in the day. He left in 1991. Satya, if you're watching this, thank you so much for actually doing the slide. But it's true, Microsoft loves Java. And we have so many different abundance of choices to get started in Java. So let's also look at the categories here. So we have Java, Java Standard Edition, Java EE, or codename Jakarta EE, or Eclipse Java EE. There's names there. I think they've kind of settled on a name with Jakarta EE, correct, Brian?
Jakarta EE, correct. Yeah, that's the standard, the Eclipse project.
Yes, and they're even launching that pretty nice. There's some really nice technologies, MicroProfile being one of them, and then we have Spring, which I have a very soft spot for, and the Pivotal team work very closely with Microsoft to engage and to drive systems. So once you have that, and you can then choose one of the choices here. So you can go virtual machine, containers, managed servers, and serverless. And we're going to go through some demos and some examples for that as we progress through these slides. Once you have chosen the selection of technology, we also want to support your architectures. So we have the monolith, which may or may not be popular at any given time. It's also like kind of Java. Is it dead? Isn't it dead? But it still does exist. So you have the monolith. Then you want to take your monolith and you start to go, wow, let me containerize it. So you containerize it in Ubuntu with the JDK, and then you chuck it into the cloud, and that is your kind of cloud native engagement. Once you realize that it's not only benefit from containerization, you go and you start to chunk out your system and you create your new microservices or macroservices. And microservices are just a nice way to say single, high cohesion, low coupled unit of work that performs a little bit of functionality. Anyone who says, who tries to define a microservice, ask them what they're selling, because it's really hard to define a microservice. Then you extract your microservices into your monolith into individual microservices, and then you create your serverless application or your architecture. And there's so many different ways to approach this. And I've had the discussion of which is the best way to go: Kubernetes, microservices, monoliths. And the monolith has come back in popularity now. But at the end of the day, what you need to do is provide value to your customer. How you do that is not as important as providing value to your customer, scalability, stability, and also time to market. And how you do that is you choose the technology, the underlying technology, with your pathways to Java on Azure. So let's go through some of those. We've discussed them in the first slide, but let's actually go in a little bit deep dive. So first, let's discuss virtual machines. Now, there are so many flavors of virtual machines. Now, in the beginning of the creation of the universe, cloud, virtual machines were the thing. In Cape Town, I'm from South Africa, they took a marketplace offering, and they chunked up the marketplace offering and started selling off the marketplace offering and into virtual machines. And then all of the other cloud providers also realized this was a great place to provide value to customers. You can do Windows, Debian, Ubuntu, Red Hat, SUSE, Oracle, Linux, nearly anything that you can think of, you can provide. Not only these larger than life VMs though, but you can get very small hyper-performant VMs. My favorite is like the nano ones. I remember that MS-DOS brought out one that was 2 megs big, and people ran and go, no, this can't happen. Where's the Windows screen? People still hadn't gotten accustomed to running something in a VM that small. So virtual machines are your bread and butter. It's still a really big staple on the cloud, and it allows you also to kind of really select and fine-tune your environment. But we're here to really talk about Java. So we want to go into the kind of not the meat and potato, but the dessert offerings. So first, before we go there, you must understand that we have a really vibrant marketplace portfolio. Now, what is the marketplace? We partner with many other companies to provide services to that via the Azure Marketplace. You can go into Azure Marketplace and you can type in there, for example, Kafka or RabbitMQ, Elastic, and you'll get all of these marketplace offerings. But the marketplace offerings, some of them are also having bolt-on to services. So if you get a VM, you might want to have a marketplace offering over there of, for example, running a Jenkins service. So you'd go into DevOps and you'd buy a VM with those marketplace offerings. So the meat and potato is the VMs. Let's go over to the dessert. So the first thing I want to say is containers. Now we have 3 real container offerings though. We have the big brother Kubernetes. And, you don't just waltz into a store and say, I'll have a Kubernetes, right? Kubernetes is created for container orchestration. Now, Kubernetes is actually Greek it's actually Kubernetes, which means helmsman. So you've got thousands of containers. It was created by the Google as a mechanism to manage their 2 billion containers they start up every day. And that really is enterprise at scale. So you don't go Kubernetes unless you need something really scalable. Then you've got container instances. Now, container instances are pretty nifty. This is kind of like Kubernetes, but it kind of is managed by a control plane or control mechanism that is a little bit more simpler to manage than Azure Kubernetes service. So you've got container instances, spin up a container or spin up X number of containers. Then we have container registry. Now, container registry, if you're used to Docker registry, container registry is very similar. And what it allows you to do, you can have an internal or external, and you can store your custom containers. Once you start to chunk up your monolith, you can actually store your container registry in there. And one of the most famous compatible container registries is Docker Hub. You can actually use Docker Hub as a container registry. So we've got Kubernetes service, container instances, and then container registries. And here, is the services portfolio. This is really the dessert. This gives me shivers just when I think about it, because this as a developer means that I've got everything in my Batman toolbox to actually go in and pick and choose. I don't have VMs, but now I can actually look back and go, how to create and develop an app. These really are mechanisms to develop platform as a service. So infrastructure as a service is your VMs. Then you get platform as a service. So one level above that of abstraction is platform as a service. You don't have to really manage the underlying tin. And then you get software as a service. And software as a service is like your Salesforce or your Office or what's a good, Brian, another good software as a service example? I mentioned two of our competitors, but we should actually do it. So yeah, Office 365, Dynamics 365. I'm supposed to mention that often as part. All my children don't get fed. Yes, Dynamics 365. And in this little tool chest, my favorite is App Service. We're going to go into a nice little demo with that. And then you also have in the services so many different other extensions to help you drive that app service. So let's go through those briefly. We have Zulu, which is your OpenJDK. We have Apache Tomcat, which you can run on app service. We have JBoss by Red Hat, one of our partners. And then you have two really nice NoSQL databases, Cosmos DB and Redis. We have SQL Server, so the relational databases, Postgres Server, MySQL Server. We've just launched a flexible server for MySQL. Then you have monitoring for all of your app services. We have App Insights, which we'll go through in the demo also, Azure DevOps, and also GitHub Actions, which we're going to go through. And then we've got our storage, Blob Storage, which recently, last week, actually did soft delete. So Blob Storage now has a recycle bin attached to it. Then you have Key Vault to manage your secrets, Active Directory to manage your people who manage the secrets, and then you have all of your enterprise integration systems there, Service Bus, Event Hub, and Event Grid. We also have serverless options. Now I know what you're saying, but can't I just go serverless? Please don't. Serverless is really intentionally used to kind of be the like what Brian's doing now. He's being my sidekick. So I forgot to share my screen, and Brian went as a serverless function in the background, and he located some operational expensive ideas, and then he gave it to me. And that really is the crux of what serverless does, though, because it's not meant to really be the main show, Rory, Preddy, but it's meant to be run in the background and be event-driven. Brian saw my event wasn't being triggered correctly, so Brian went and created a triggered reminder to tell me to share my screen. And that's really what it is, though. Brian is actually much more than just a function. He's also a logic app, because Brian can do sequentially workflow-based systems, and really that is logic apps. So logic apps is kind of your simple workflow, and then now enables you to really to daisy chain your functions and your app services and your API calls to get a little bit more logic out of your serverless applications.
I'll add a little something for logic apps, if I may. Yeah, one of the cool things about those is, if you have a Java application, and let's say you don't have an API that you can use to access Twitter or one of hundreds other software as a service platforms out there, you can actually use our built-in connectors to connect directly to those services. And we have services for all the major cloud platforms, plus pretty much a lot of things that you would expect that run on the cloud that are always on out there and available. So that's one of the cool things about Logic Apps, is you can take that and you can plug in your third-party apps really easily. Great job.
One of the things I'm still battling with, like you said, is that I used to train people on how to do Twitter integration. So they always used to write the bots to talk to my Twitter profile. So I've got these logic apps and these functions that talk to me, except they pop up occasionally because they put them on timers on one day of the year. And then I have to do a Turing test on these Twitter bots to make sure they're not human. It's like, hi, Rory, how are you doing? I go, are you a bot? I regret that. And I'm really, really impressed that even students can actually go create that bots and harass my profile. So then we have something else. Now, you've got infrastructure as a service, then you've got platform as a service, and you've got software as a service. But we've also launched something called managed platforms. So what a managed platform is, it takes what we expect your customers to want from an enterprise system, and then we bundle it all together and give it to you as a no-frills kind of offering that really makes your lives better. Now, we have two of those right now that are really popular. We have OpenShift, Red Hat OpenShift, and then we also have recently, gone generally available Azure Spring Cloud. Now, what Azure Spring Cloud does, it takes Kubernetes and then runs your app services on top of it. And what it does, it abstracts that into a offering, ties into your CI/CD automation, and then gives you the monitoring and the Active Directory features. And that's the highest level of abstraction that you can actually get in the cloud, because that means that you can run your platform and your applications and not worry about their life cycle on a Kubernetes service, not have to worry about the underlying tin, and then also integrate with Azure Functions where possible. And those are really the different tiers that you have for all of the ways that the pathways that you can have to get your app onto Azure. So once you've chosen the pathway, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, it's a rambunctious, bombastic journey to choose your pathway on Azure, fraught with pirates and hoodlums and excitement and perils and emotional roller coaster. And that's why Microsoft is here. And we've got this great portal called Microsoft Learn that can assist you in choosing the right platform. We have endless kind of smorgasbord of documentation on which is the right service to choose. So once you have that, then we have a really rich Java and Azure tooling ecosystem. And I like to say that that's because Microsoft was a company made by developers, our founders, Gates and Alan, who created this, and they were developers who instilled in us this developer mindset. And then for developers, and there's more than 10 million .NET developers, 9 million Java developers who like to call Azure home and use this for their products. So once you have your tools, the next step is to choose a DevOps tool integration, because you don't want to have to wake up in the middle of the night and go, my system is down, quickly let me go push a build. You want to start from the beginning to actually push. Now, I cut my teeth with Maven and Jenkins back when Jenkins was really still cutting edge. And then subsequently now I've moved over to Terraform and Github Actions. There's also Azure DevOps and then also the Azure SDK. But the nice thing about this is that it is just endless in possibilities. You can build nearly anything from that and make your life so much easier. Friends don't let friends, the phrase was deploy to production on Friday. With all of those tools, you can deploy on a Friday and also hope that not guarantee that your weekend won't be ruined. Once you have your DevOps,
just one thing I want to mention on DevOps as well. One of the nice things is if you have something like Jenkins that you're already using, then you can actually integrate with those other tools that Rory showed as well. For example, Let's say you do your build and test in Jenkins, which most people do when they're working with Java. You can actually use Azure DevOps as your release mechanism. So you can actually do the build and test in Jenkins, and then we have actual extensions that you can use from Jenkins to plug into Azure DevOps, and now you're in Azure, and now you can do your deployment. So you can take your artifacts from the build and test, put them in Azure DevOps, and now with a fully authenticated environment, you can deploy things out to Azure, to staging environments. We have different platforms and different destinations you can use for that, as Rory indicated. And the other thing I was going to add there, just not to be overlooked, but on the right, there was GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions is a great way to deploy your applications as well. Yeah, this.
Yeah, that actually is the GitHub. I had to Google that today because that was part of my demo. I need to sell Brian's session. I've seen Brian's session. Brian's immediately on after me. Great session. Really don't miss it. Go get a cup of coffee. Ignore my session, but really don't miss Brian's session. Don't ignore my session.
I'm actually not going to talk about much other than I'm going to tell people about the free workshop they can go and check out on February 18th at DevNexus. There we go.
Even more important.
Yeah. So I'm going to show them about that. Yeah.
So we have so many IDE support. It's like that VI, Vim, and Emacs, fight. Like people are so opinionated. And then Atom came in, and all of those other things. Please don't hurt me, the VI people there. I respect you holistically. But there are so many different ways to actually code. We have a very strong partnership with IntelliJ IDE around Azure Toolkit. We have a great partnership with Eclipse. And then my golden child, VS Code, the code editor of choice. And we have so many extensions for each of them. If you go into the marketplace for each of those and you type in Azure, chances are you can do everything for Azure on each one of those, which is a marvel though. Which means that every time that we bring out a product, we go to each of these partners and we make sure that the developers are able to have that wondrous development experience in each one of those tools. We've just launched the VS Code Azure Spring Cloud extension, which is absolutely great. So go check in each one of those and the IDE support. So you've chosen your pathway. You've also looked at architecture. You've got your IDEs, and now you're kind of ready to kind of start your process. But you want to also look at solutions of your architecture. So let's go look at some of the solutions here around how you can get it. And I know that Brian did touch on that. So I'm going to choose an Eclipse. Yeah, I think you actually created these in the day, these architectural principles. You're going to choose Eclipse as an IDE. You're going to use GitHub to store your, or GitHub Enterprise to store your code. You're going to use Jenkins as your CI/CD. Jenkins is then going to use Maven to deploy to a Oracle WebLogic cluster. Now we have a really great, incredible Oracle WebLogic offering, well supported by by Oracle and Microsoft. You're going to use Coherence to manage your cluster, and then you're going to use Oracle Database to manage your data along with Coherence. All the time, you're going to use an app gateway there to manage the client integration, and then Elastic to manage your logs. So this is one of the solutions we recommend. The other solution, and you can see there we kind of spin it up, is now we were in IntelliJ IDE. We're still using GitHub there. We're using Azure DevOps, but this time it builds your container, your custom container with all your layers, and you can use build packs also now to scan your container and selectively using like artificial intelligence, choose which layers you want. I'm a big fan of build packs, Paquito build packs. Then you've got your container registry, and it's going to deploy to a WebSphere Liberty cluster that is going to use Traffic Manager to engage with its customers, Redis for a first layer cache, Postgres for its relational database, and then Cosmos DB for its NoSQL integration, all while authenticating with Active Directory, and then also running on Kubernetes service to manage your cluster. Yeah, we're going to offer that, and I think we do offer that in general availability, WebSphere Liberty on Kubernetes cluster, and then using application insights for your monitoring. The next solution, so we still got IntelliJ IDE. We're going to be GitHub, Jenkins to Maven, but now we're pushing to a VM JBoss by Red Hat. And good news, you can also push to an app service with a running JBoss that is in public preview. We're going to use Traffic Manager again, Active Directory, and then we're going to run this on an app service. Like I said there, you can run JBoss on app service. You're going to integrate with Cosmos DB for your NoSQL, Key Vault for your securities, MySQL for your relational database, Service Bus for your events, and then Elastic for your logs. Finally, the last solution, the big brother, we're going to go IntelliJ, GitHub to Azure DevOps. Then we're going to go into this beautiful architecture where you're going to run your Spring Boot microservices with a breaker dashboard, a config dashboard, your API gateway, your service registry for your microservices, distributed tracing, all running on the Azure Spring Cloud service here, integrating with Azure Postgres, and I'll show you a demo of that soon, Azure SQL, and then Service Bus for your events. So the last one, also sample solution number 5, you got your Blob Storage. So this isn't really an app service because this is really a serverless function. And then you've got your logic apps. Your logic apps is then going to push to multiple different functions, Cosmos DB, Service Bus, Twilio, like Brian mentioned there, and then also to your web app there. So this is a great kind of architecture to show you how you can also use your events to manage multiple workflows. So enough slides, let's go to a demo. And I'm almost guaranteed that this is the premium for this demo. So I spoke to the product team today, and they were really excited for me to demo this. This is the new revamped Azure DevOps starters to start on all of your kind of your selections that integrates with GitHub Actions. So you can go to aka.ms/DevOps-starters. I'm going to leave the QR code there also. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the DevOps starters to spin up an entire architecture to go to Azure App Services, and then you'll see there it's going to use Gradle to actually do the build structure to build our apps, and then we can use GitHub Workflow using GitHub Actions to go and deploy, build, and run regression tests. We're going to use full integration and regression tests all in 3 simple steps. So let's start with that. I'm going to go out of here, and I want to show you something interesting. I'm never going to leave my browser. The entire time we're going to do this, I'm going to go, and even the coding, I'm never going to leave my browser. So I'm going to go to portal.azure.com, and this is the Azure portal. And the nice thing about demos, always start from the beginning. It gives people a nice kind of feeling of where they start. So we're going to go to the portal, Azure, portal.azure.com, and then I'm going to go into DevOps starters here. And now, the next thing about demos, the next advice is always have a backup. So I've got my little DevNexus Linux backup there. Going to make that a little bit bigger. Okay, cool. Then I'm going to go create. And I've got my Azure account already. You can go and create a free account. There's links that Diane is going to send with that. Now, you can choose .NET, Node.js, Java, PHP, static website, or Python, or Go. And you know, the interesting thing is that we changed here. You can see setting up DevOps started with GitHub, change settings here. We changed this as a default. We're so confident in our partnership with GitHub Actions and GitHub that we changed this as the default. You can change it back to Azure DevOps, the previous version there if you want, but we're going to stay with GitHub Actions. So we're going to choose Java because that pays my bills, well, it used to pay Brian's bills here also, but you can choose any one of the frameworks. So then we're going to go next framework. I'm going to choose Spring here as my service, next. Then we're going to choose a Linux web app. You can also choose Windows web app, Kubernetes service, or web app for containers. Then I'm going to click create. I do need to authorize with my GitHub account because it's going to go into my GitHub account and create the repo for me. So I'm going to call that repository here, and I'm going to call this Reactor Dev Nexus RPZA. I've got my subscription, I've got my web app name, already exists. Whoa, that's how industrious I am. Then I'm going to call this, okay, RPZA Dev Nexus. Yeah, I'm gonna leave this in. Well, I'm gonna go to West Europe because I'm in South Africa. So let's go to West Europe. It's right at the top. I keep on forgetting West Europe. West Europe. I'm gonna leave it at the P1 V2. You can also go the free setting here. If you go additional settings, you can go free. So free as in free beer or shared. I'm gonna leave that as P1, P2 because it makes the actual demos easy. And then I'm gonna hit review and create. It's gonna go check that everything's hunky-dory. And in 3 steps, I have an GitHub Actions Azure Workflow using CI/CD all in the browser. I never have to leave my browser because I'm also going to show you how to access it with Azure Code Spaces. So it's going to provision this. Now the entire workflow is going to take about 5 minutes to run. And the reason it's so performant is because we recently added Gradle. But I'm not going to really wait for that. I'm going to go back into my existing one. So that's the one that I created, and we'll come back to our little ones, but it's the exact same thing that we created. And you'll see there, I've got a screen in my DevOps starter. I'm called this one Dev Nexus Linux because it's on a Linux container. And what you'll notice that I've got a nice screen here. So the first thing is that you'll see that the repository now, and I click through on that repository. Let me click through there, click through, and I click through here, and I've got a GitHub repository here that that has a few directories. I've got my workflows created for me. I've got my application, which is my Spring Boot application. I've got my ARM template to create my resources, and then I've got my integration tests. I've also got a little drop down here saying open with code spaces. And I can go in there, and I've previously created a code space there. I can click on that code space, and now we're going to go in and open up my entire GitHub Actions workflow in Azure, in a GitHub code space. It's connecting to my code space, starting it there, and we'll come back to that now. So I've got my repo, and I can edit everything through there. I've also got my workflow file. Let's go back. Oh, it says it really. I love how the portal kind of says, "Hey guys, your other thing that you did there is running." Okay, let's go back there. Okay, so I've got my repo here, and it's got my commit version here. I've also got my jobs that ran build application source that took 50 seconds. Trust me, that is super fast. So set up my job, check out the code that we had in the repo, set up Java 8, build with Gradle, world first, build with Gradle, which actually uses an algorithm to determine how to build it and pulls in only the repositories you need. I can see Brian smiling there because this is really, really cutting edge stuff here. Checking out my artifacts, building my artifacts, and then it actually posts the artifact to my repo in a jar in the target directory. So I've got my build application source, and then I can go to deploy to Azure Web Apps. And this took about a minute to run also. And it unzips it, the artifact, downloads the ARM template to create the resources, and then deploys the ARM template, and then deploys to the Azure resource. Now, when you deploy to the Azure Web App, we'll get a nice little repo URL there. I'll click onto that. And I changed the name here recently to Dev Nexus. Your GitHub workflow has been successfully run. And then lastly, we've got run our functional tests. And run the functional tests here, where is the Gradle? Run functional tests here. And if you remember in our functional tests and code spaces, you can actually run, well, it's taking its time there. You can actually run the functional tests in GitHub code spaces. And this runs the test there. You can see there's 2 actionable tests, and it actually tests the page that it exists there, and then it comes back and you've got your result from that. So you've got your functional tests, then you've got your application endpoint, and then we still have our app service. You notice I never really cared about where I'm hosting here. It's just hosting in the web app service, and then I've got my application insights. So before we go into app service, let's go into our application insights. I've been pinging this a little bit here. We can go into application map. We just hit it now, so we should have 1 or 2 map components right now, and this gives a nice view of your application components here. We'll wait for it to refresh. But the nice thing about this, you can also use it for multiple different platforms, Azure Spring Cloud, your Kubernetes, and it gives you the ability to really map out your application and find out performance issues, errors, a lot of nice little additional features. It can go all the way up to Azure Spring Cloud. I want to show you what it looks like in a very enterprise driven system. So this is a repo that I created called Azure Spring Cloud. And then we've got my application insights here. And I pushed about 1 million transactions here. Let's go into application map. So this is what it happens when you look, let's go last 30 days. Let's go apply. Might take a few seconds here, but the nice thing about application insights is that it gives you the ability to drill down, and we've recently launched this all the way from the HTML, from the clients hitting the HTML and who did it, to the application service, the entry points for each one of those into the database. So world first, you can go all the way into the database. Let's see if CodeSpaces has come back, because I really want to show you CodeSpaces. Once that's loading there, getting things ready. Whoa, Law of Demos says that it has to actually take this long, even though I did connect to it today. So I've got my Java application. Let's go back in there. I wanted to push a functional test here, but the nice thing is, because this is on GitHub, I can actually, instead of CodeSpaces, I can go make the changes right here. So I'm going to go, I'm going to edit it on here. So I'm going to go in Applications. I'm going to go into Source, Main, Resources, Static, Index.html. I want to change it there to, instead of dev nexus, I'm going to edit that there and say dev nexus RPZA, because it really likes that name, RPZA. And then I'm going to go commit changes. What you'll see there, the minute I did that, and I go into my workflow, my actions, it's going to trigger the entire, there we go. It's going to trigger the entire action workflow here. It's going to go build the application source in Gradle and push it to my Azure Web App, and then run my functional test again. And that's really CI/CD. So how you start that is through your DevOps starters. You can use CodeSpaces when it's behaving. No, I don't think it's ever going to come back. You can use CodeSpaces to actually run that. And then you can use, here we go, the monitoring to determine what your services and how they perform. And you can see here, I've got some services here. I've hit it with 631,000 calls. I actually did that in CodeSpaces. I can drill through that, in performance impact, then go see in my logs, investigate.
Sorry, did you use an extension to make the calls, or what did you use to make the calls?
No, this is a brand new feature. It was launched 2 weeks ago. This is the APM that is built into Azure Spring Cloud from 2 weeks ago. I know, insane. But watch this out. I'm going to go investigate failures, and then I can go into my investigate failures. So I can actually see the request count on when it was peaked. So I can go there. No, I'm actually zooming out then. Zoom in. I think it's because I'm in such a funny little zoom. Let's go smaller. Yeah, let's go smaller. It did not like my resolution. Okay, yeah. It really didn't like my resolution. So you can go investigate the failures here, and you can go into the physical failures, examples for each. But my favorite, the new feature is dependencies. So application insights, you can go all the way to dependencies over here, and all the way, okay, this doesn't have an example here because it's a failure, but all the way into the database, so the SQL selects. If I go back into my application map and I just select here and I go investigate performance, and this is really the key to that. It's to make your development experience wondrous. So I can go dependencies, and I've got the, it's a little bit small here, HTTP GET, and I can investigate each one of those samples there. I don't have a SQL sample, but you can go to the details for each one of those and all the way down. So the tooling you can use is Mr. CodeSpaces come back? Oh, still not coming. Okay. Yeah, so everything is on the cloud though. So
there is one thing you could show is the code. So if you go over to code, you can show the workflow in GitHub.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I was going to do that in that. So I'm going to actually go into the, so check this out. I've got my dev nexus here. I'm going to clone this code, and I'm going to go open in GitHub Desktop. So this will open up in GitHub Desktop, and then from GitHub Desktop, I can actually go, okay, cool, clone this locally, clone, watch this, so it's going to clone it locally, and then from that actual view, I can go in and just launch Visual Studio Code. It's going to launch Visual Studio Code, and you can see the end-to-end experience, except for that CodeSpaces issue, is just so smooth. So here's the code that I have here. And what I want to show you is that GitHub workflow here. So I've got the starter workflow, and I spoke to the team. I actually congratulated them. I wanted to give them a hug. So I've got the actual environment variables, the triggers, so pull and master, and then I've got the jobs, build on, so that the checkout action. It uses 3 different checkouts. Set up Java action, build with Gradle. So check that out. How nice is that? Gradle build test bootwar, uses an uberwar. Makes some directories, archives the build artifacts, and then uploads the ARM templates. So builds your actual application services. Deploy to Azure App Service here. So you download the artifacts, and then does the deploy. Where were we? Yeah, so deploy the artifact, and then log into Azure. Deploy to the Azure Web App there, and that's my favorite action there. Azure Web App deploy runs the functional test as part of the action there. So you can see the Gradle fat jar. I love that. Gradle fat jar, and then also sets up the environment to run the functional tests. And that's all automated, and it's done that for all of the different languages that you can use. Now, I know what you're saying, Rory. You promised me a demo where we would do actual databases. So let me just zoom in here. So one of the things that we have been recently getting busy with is an entry in our Learn module called Rapidly, where's that? Rapidly develop and deploy Azure DevOps and Java apps with GitHub Actions, and this is on MS Learn. And guess what? This is a scoop, because this is the first time we're actually mentioning this on a public forum. Rapidly develop and deploy Java apps as part of the Java and Azure Learn path. And what this will do, and there's 2 exercises that you can actually do, and it will take GitHub Actions and allow you. There's app services. Let's go a little bit down. You can see here I've got my Reactor DevNexus RPZA. I think that is that. Let me just find the actual deployment that I did do there. I want to go into app services. I've got 3. So I've got so that's the one we just did. Reactor DevNexus RPZA. RPZA. Okay, this is what happens when you get way too many there. And this will actually set up your environment variables here. For a quick start, let's go into configuration for your secrets. So you can set up your secrets here. And then I've also got a MySQL database running in the background here. And this is the pet store. So let's go Spring Pet. There we go. So yeah, data source password, Spring data source, and that's all via GitHub Actions. You all generate the actual resources, the passwords, all of that information via GitHub Actions. If I want to go into my actual application, it will generate all for that with a few clicks. Also, I want to browse that into my pet clinic here, and you can see here, this is using GitHub Actions with that Azure DevOps integration, and I've got a database running in the background there, a MySQL database running in the background. So the experience is glamorous, the technology is broad, the architectures are infinite, and that's all I really wanted to show you today on the session. I hope that I haven't blown your mind a little bit too much. You can get everything on Azure DevOps starters. So let's go from this slide. So aka.ms DevOps-starters, and there are some resources now, and now my colleagues have already kind of shared them. You can get the demo code on DevOps starters, Azure Java and Azure landing page with all of those technologies and choices that you can get, the Java and Azure docs, the Java Learn path, and now the scoop of that rapidly deploy applications there, that you can get it running in workflow with a database running there, and everything is set up for you. Then that's the Java Learn path, and there's 12 new modules in there. Then also Microsoft DevNexus, February 17th to the 18th. Learn more, so you can access there about all the sessions we're doing. I think we're doing about 10 sessions there, and you can register and you get a 50% discount off the workshop, which over to you, Brian. I think you're going to cover correct.
Yes, nice segue, Rory. Thank you very much. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about DevNexus. It's February 17th to 18th. Microsoft is a sponsor. And we have some free workshops taking place on the 18th. One by my colleague, Reza Rahman, and one by myself. They're each 4 hours. And let's see, I just wanted to give you sort of a preview of the workshop that I'm going to be presenting. So I've got it on my screen here. Let me see. There we go. Whoop, maybe not. That's Rory. There we go. So hopefully you can see my screen now. I've got a repo that you can actually get started with. DevOps for Java.
Brian, I think you I don't know which screen you're sharing. Sorry, I just see you, and you're beautiful. But I don't know. Diane, can you see Brian's screen?
We'll check. I will share my screen again. How's that?
Yeah, let's try to share it again. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I just I shared it a while ago. Maybe it timed out or something. Just a moment. It's loading up. Okay.
Great.
The fun things about.
Yes.
There we go.
The Azure function. I provided the Azure function for Brian there.
Yeah. See. Hey. So anyway, so the DevNexus event, as was shown in the Q&A, is at DevNexus 2021. And we are going to have a couple of announcements there. You can see that on a blog that's in that link. But on the 18th in the workshops, you can see my colleague's going to have a Java EE on Azure workshop with Reza Rahman. And then I'm going to have DevOps for Java shops. And in that session, I'm going to be using this repo, which is bben's DevOps for Java shops on GitHub. I've got a few demos. Actually, I'm going to show you in detail how to build a lot of things that Rory showed today. So I'm going to show you how to take some code from GitHub in Java and put it into Azure DevOps and build it, and then create a release pipeline, which is going to have staging and production. And there's actually going to be an A/B test that goes on with that in staging and production. So what will happen is you can create one version of the software, publish it out to production, and then the next version of the software you can publish out to what we call a deployment slot on the production server, but it's not available 100%. Then what we do is we set a trigger so that 50% of the users will go to the new version of the software and 50% of the users will see the old version of the software. And if we like that, we can update the code, push everything out to production, or roll back. So we'll be covering that. That's the first part of the workshop. The second part of the workshop is going to be GitHub Actions. In GitHub Actions, we're actually going to deliver the same functionality with the A/B testing, but we're going to do it with a GitHub action directly from Azure, directly from GitHub into an Azure Web App using feature flags. So something called application configuration, which is a relatively new service on Azure. And the cool thing about feature flags is you don't need to push your code each time. The code that you have in production will have the new feature and the old feature. And what you can do is you can set a flag in your application configuration to say, send 50% of the people to the new version of the software and 50% of the people to the old version of the software. And then you can monitor the behavior. And if you like that, you can literally set the feature flag to 100% for the new version or 0%. And that's going to basically do the same thing as Azure DevOps. There's good and bad of each, and I'll cover that in the workshop. But that's essentially what we're going to do there. So we're going to do an Azure DevOps and GitHub Actions. You're going to start with a GitHub repo for both of those. And at the end, you're going to have application, a web application that you can use to do A/B testing and basically put things into production. We're going to use the Azure Portal for this. This is a little preview of what I've got. This is our staging and production servers and our application configuration. And let's see, what else can I talk about? I guess that's about it. That's all I want to talk about. So DevNexus, if you get a chance, please do check it out via the link that's in the chat, and check out our workshops as well. We do have several speakers here, and the workshops, as I mentioned before, there's a couple of them going on. So that's all I wanted to say. You can also look at the.
Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thank you to Brian, and thank you to me for being Brian's sidekick and returning the favor. It was really fun. Yeah, so there's so much opportunity, and it's such an incredible time to be a developer and to have all of these tools at our hands and mindset. Reach out to me on Twitter at Rory Preddy and Brian also, and yeah, and graciously thank you out to our host, the Reactor team, who's always so on time and so courteous. We really appreciate everything you do. Thanks everyone, and good night, good evening, and good morning.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rory and Brian. We really appreciate it.